Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lora Rolling and this is the fifth and final part of our Winter Heart Ornament series. This is the gorgeous ornament that we have been making. Today we are going to take all of the units that we have made and put them all together, making our ornament, and we're also going to do the cap, the top part of the ornament. If you have missed parts 1 through 4, tap on the description down below and click on the links. Finish those units first and then come back to this video. Now all we need to do is get our material list started, so let's go. So let's start out with the units that we've already made. We have 20 units in all, 5 of each unit that we did in the first 4 parts of this series. And I'm going to just set these aside so that there's room for the other materials that we're going to need, because we are also going to need lots of thread. I'm using the Eslon Fire Crystal in 4 pound. You can also use 6 pound if you'd like, or your fire line. And I like to use the size 10 beading needle. And then to snip my thread, I like to use my wire cutters and my long nose pliers. Just kind of hold my thread in place while I snip it. You can also use scissors to do this. Alrighty, so if you want to use the fire method to connect your thread, I'm going to show you how to do that when we get to a point where we are needing to add thread. So get your materials ready and let's begin. Starting with the first unit, which is the 3 hearts unit, we are going to have our thread or our needle already threaded with at least 3 feet of thread. We're definitely going to add more thread as we go, and I'll show you how to do that. But so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our unit. You will notice that there is a snowflake that is higher than the other one. The one that is higher is the one that's on the left, and then the lower snowflake is on the right. And the reason I say that is because they're going to connect together in that way. You always want the higher snowflake, the one that ends at the top row, to be on the left, and then the lower one to be on the right, because that's how our connector beads are going to connect. They're already there for you, right? So the first thing that we need to do is weave in our thread. Sew up the far right on the second level of pink. So the far right pink bead on the second level. So it's the 4th bead on the second level. And then we're going to sew down the bead that's right next to it. So down the pink. Then we're going to sew up the pink one that's right next to that. And now we're going to sew up all the way until we get to this green bead right here. So just follow my lead. We're now sewing up the pink bead, and then we're going to sew up the green bead above that, making sure the thread is not being caught, because that tail really likes to get caught. Then sew up the green bead right above that one. It's kind of to the left above it. Then up the next bead that's on top of that one. Then next bead up, the next bead up, the next bead up. Now we are going to be able to connect our first unit, our first 2 units together. So making sure that that snowflake is up at the top on the left, not the lower one, but the higher one. We're going to connect these 2 beads together. We're coming out of this bead. We're going to go down the first sticky outie bead on our second unit. Just like that. Then we're going to sew down the next sticky up bead on the first unit, and then we will sew down the next sticky up bead on the second unit, and you'll see that it's going to start zipping it up. I like to sew through maybe 3 or 4 before I actually pull it. Kind of looks like shoelaces. And now we're going to just zip it up together so they are connected. Now you can just zip up, continuing to just go back and forth between each unit, zipping up the beads, the units, until you reach the bottom. Then you will come out of this bottom bead. Once you reach the bottom, I'll meet you down here. Okay, so now we have sewn back and forth, pulled our thread, it's nice and tight, and we're coming out of this bead. It's the second one from the bottom. So both of our units are connected. We still have our tail right here, and we're going to sew through the next bead on the second unit, and then sew through the bottom corner bead on the second unit. Then we're going to sew up the first bead right next to the corner bead, and now we are in position to add our next unit, making sure that the snowflake is high up on the top and lower on the right. So high on the left, we're going to connect this one, zipping upwards this time. So our thread is coming out of this bead. We're going to sew up this first sticky outie bead, and then sew up the next sticky outie on the second unit, making sure that our thread is not twisted. Okay, pull it a little closer, and now sew through the next sticky outie on the third unit, and we're going to pull it tight, and we're going to zip it up all the way up until you end in this top unit, this bead right up here, the last sticky outie on the right. Okay, so I will meet you there. Okay, so now we are coming out the last sticky outie on the third unit. We're going to pull it nice and tight so they're all connected, and then we're going to sew up the next bead on the third unit and sew through the corner bead. Okay, so now we can add our next unit, which is going to be a big heart unit. Now you'll notice on the big heart unit, we have a snowflake that is on the upper left, okay? That's there strategically because we know that we need our beads, our connector beads to be on the right, but there's no connector beads on the left, right? So we are going to make sure that that big snowflake is on the left, and we are now going to attach our big snowflake to the third unit, the third 3 flowers unit. So in order to do that, we need to get in position. So we're going to sew down that first bead after the corner. Coming out of this first bead, we are going to now sew through, this is the bottom row of the big heart, this first sticky outie bead. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Okay, so now we're going to sew down the third flowers unit, and down the next sticky outie on the big heart, and then the next sticky outie, which happens to be the white bead on the 3 hearts, and the next, and we're going to zip it all the way down. We can pull it tight now. We're going to sew all the way down, zipping it up until we end in this last corner bead right here. Okay, so I will meet you there. Isn't it so satisfying to zip them all together now? I love this part. Okay, so now our needle is coming out of the corner bead on our third flower unit. And we are now going to sew down that first bead, putting our thread in position to pick up our fourth 3 flower unit, right? So now we are in position to connect our fourth by just sewing through that first sticky outie bead. And then of course sew into the next one on the big unit, the next one on the 4th flower unit, and zip it on down all the way until, let's see, we're gonna tighten this all the way until you get to this bead right here, and I will meet you there. Okay, so now we are coming out of this bead. We're going to sew through, and then we're going to sew through the next 2 beads on the 4th unit. Trying to do it from the left is a little difficult. And so now we're coming out the corner bead, and you'll notice that there are spaces left over, and it is so tempting to sew those spaces in together, but don't do it, because these little spaces are what makes these units fit the ornament. And if we sew them up too tight, they're not going to, the ornament will be too big to fit in. So it's the precise way to do it. I know it's tempting, but don't sew these up. Instead, or cinch them up or whatever. Instead, we're going to continue on and we're going to sew up this next bead. We're going to add our fifth and final 3 hearts flower, making sure that the cloud is, the higher cloud is on the left. We're going to sew up that first sticky outie and then continue to sew up until we get to, let's see, all the way up until we get through this bead, and I will meet you there. Okay, now we are sewing through this bead. We're going to pull it tight and then sew up through the top bead and also through the corner bead. Oops, don't want to get that. You don't want to tie a knot, that's for sure. And now we sew through this first bead on the top. Now we're going to add one more big heart. The big heart, remember, has the snowflake coming down on the left-hand side. So we are going to place the bottom of the big heart down, and we're going to sew through this first sticky outie bead. Okay, so now we're going to sew through this second bead on the big unit, and then through the next sticky outie bead on the big heart unit. So that it looks like this. We can pull those tight and then zip it on up until you end in this corner bead of the big unit. Okay, now we are in position to connect the first 3 hearts unit to the last one. So we're going to sew through that corner bead, sew down the next bead, and now we can sew down the first sticky outie bead of the first unit. So we're connecting the first unit to the 5th 3 hearts unit. Sewing down each one, and I will meet you. Let's see, let me get through this one, and we'll zip it up all the way down. Oh, I'm twisted. Got to take it nice and slow so you don't get twisted like I am. So it's nice and flat like that, and zip it up, and I will meet you at this bead. This is the first unit that we put on, so this bead right here. I'll meet you there. Okay, so this is what we have so far, and we're coming out of this last sticky outy bead. We're going to pull it through, and we're going to sew down the next bead and also through the corner bead. If you remember, that was the first unit we put on. Now we need to sew through all 5 of these corner beads and cinch them up together. Okay, we're not sewing through these beads that have the spaces. Okay, we're just going to sew through the sticky out beads on the corner. 1, 2, turning as we go, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and now we can pull it. We're going to go through all 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, now we're going to go through 2 more. 1, 2. Now we're going to sew up, oh, I'm sorry, 3 more. So 3. Now we're going to sew up this line of beads and then sew up this line of beads. Ending with this one, we're going to come out of this corner bead, and I'll meet you there. Okay, now we have completed our flower garden, right? And we are coming out of our corner bead, and we are ready to add our third big heart. So our big heart unit is going to have the snowflake coming down on the left. We're going to connect it by sewing through this first bead right next to the corner bead. Now it's in position to catch this first sticky outy bead. Okay, now we're going to sew through the next sticky outy bead. My thread is not cooperating. There we go. And sew through the next on the big heart. And so this is what you have now. So we're going to zip it up, and we're going to sew all the way down, zip it up until we get to this corner bead on the big heart this time. I'll meet you there. Okay, so we are now coming out of our corner bead on the big heart unit, and I wanted to just make sure that you did not sew through this last sticky outy bead on the 3 hearts. Instead, we sewed up the second to the last sticky outy on the 3 hearts, and then through the last sticky outy on the big heart, and then we moved to the corner through this one, and then through the corner bead. So that's where our position is. Now we get to start adding our heart and snow unit. Okay, so this heart and snow unit will be fitting right on the big heart units, in between the big heart units. Okay, and if you notice, the connection beads are on the side that has the one snowflake, but there are no connection beads on the side that has the two. So we're going to make sure that the one snowflake on the heart and snow is on the right and the two snowflakes are on the left. And that's how we can determine which direction we want our unit to be added. So we're going to, of course, zip up the right hand side to our big heart unit that we are coming out of. To position ourselves correctly to do that, we need to sew through this first bead above the corner bead, and now we're in position to sew up our first sticky outy bead on our heart and snow. So let's see, we're right there, and so we're going to sew through our next sticky outy bead on the big heart, and our next sticky outy on this heart and snow, and go ahead and zip that up. And now we are going to zip it all the way up until we come out of this top corner bead on the big heart. Okay, so now we are sewing through the top corner bead on the big heart, and we are now ready to add our second heart and snow unit onto this big heart, and remembering that the two snowflakes are always on the left. So we're going to put our thread through, go ahead and sew through these first two beads, 1 and 2, positioning it so that we're ready to catch the second, what looks like the second sticky outy, but it's the one right next to the blue bead. Okay, so the sticky outy that's right next to the blue bead, that's the one that we're going to sew through first. And then sew through the next sticky outy on the big unit. Then through the next sticky outy on the heart and snow. Oops, just hit my camera. And we're going to zip it up, and then we're going to zigzag it all the way down, zip it up until we come out of this, is it this one? No, it's this one, till we come out of this corner bead. Okay, so we are coming out of the last sticky outy bead on the big heart unit. We're not going to sew through this blue one. Instead, we're going to sew through the green one and the corner bead on the big heart, just like that. And now we are ready to connect all 5 of these corner beads. So we're going to sew through the next one, the next corner bead, the next one, that's 4, and here's number 5, and we're going to go through that again. Pull it tight. It's going to loosen up unless we do it a second time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then pull it tight. And now we're going to travel through 3 more. 1, 2, 3. Pull it tight so you can't see any thread in there at all. And now we're going to sew up the next bead in the big heart unit. Putting us in position to zip up this line. So we're going to zip it up. Just like we did all the other ones. Just like this. And we are going to finish in this top corner bead of the big heart. So I'll meet you there. Okay, zipping it up, coming out of this bead, we're going to sew up through the next 2 beads. Now we're going to turn it. We're up at the top of our big heart. We're going to sew down the next 2 beads. That's 1 and 2. And now we are in position to put another heart and snow on, remembering that our snowflakes, we have 2 snowflakes on the left. So we're going to add that 2 by, remember this is the one where we first sew through. The first sticky outy bead is the one that's right next to the blue bead. So sew down that bead. And then sew down the second sticky outy bead and continue on zipping it up until we get to the corner bead on the bottom of the heart and snow. So right there. Okay, so we are coming out of this bead, which is the 3rd up. We're going to sew through the blue bead and through the corner bead. Sew up the next 2 beads, and now we are in position to put on a big heart bead. Now remember, the big heart bead has the snowflake on the left, okay? So not on the right, but on the left. So we're attaching the left side to the heart and snow. So now we're going to sew up. It's the second sticky out bead. The first one's considered right next to the corner. We're not sewing up through that first one. We're sewing up through the second one. Okay, just like that. And then we're going to zip it up until we get to the top of the big heart. And right in, we're going to be coming through that top connector bead or corner bead. I'll meet you there. Okay, so we are coming out of the last sticky up bead on the heart and snow. We're going to come up the last 2 on the big heart, which is the corner bead, And now we're going to connect another heart and snow, which, remembering that the two snowflakes are on the left. So we're going to get into position by sewing down the first two beads, coming out that first sticky uppy. And now we're going to sew down the one that's right next to the blue bead. Then the next sticky uppy on the big heart. And the next sticky uppy on the heart and snow. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Zip it up, sew all the way down until you are at the bottom of the big heart corner bead. I'll see you there. Okay, we are coming out of this last sticky up bead on the big heart. We're not sewing through the blue. Instead, we're going to sew down the next one underneath the sticky outie and also the corner bead. Now we are in position to connect our 3 hearts to the big heart. So actually we need to sew down 2 beads first. So sew down 1 and 2, and now we are in position to sew to connect the 3 hearts. So we're going to not sew through that first sticky outie, just the next one down below it. So this is what it looks like. And of course, we're going to catch the next one and the next one, and we're going to zip it all the way down until we have gotten to this last one right here, and we're going to come out through this corner bead. Okay, so now I am coming out of my last sticky uppy bead on my big heart. I'm going to sew down the bottom 2 and coming out the corner of the 3 hearts. Now we're going to sew through the 5 corner beads. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to do that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we're going to do 4 more. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Now pull it tight so it's a nice circle. You can't see any thread at all. Now, see, my tail is right here. Your tail should be right here as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sew through this one right here, right next to the one that I was coming out of, and I'm just going to sew all the way up until I get to this bead right here. Okay, and I will meet you there. I'm also going to cut off my tail. I'm going to show you how I do that. Super simple. I'll meet you right here. Okay, I'm coming out of this bead now, having weaved all the way through, hiding my thread. Now I'm going to come up these 2 beads. Now I'm going to go down the bead to the left of it, down the next bead, up the bead right underneath the blue bead, up the blue bead, and through the corner bead. Now we are in position to put on our next unit, but first I'm going to cut off my tail. I'm just going to grab my little tail with my needle nose pliers, hold up my units, and I'm going to push down so there's just a little tension, but I don't want to catch a bead while I'm cutting this. Be very careful, you don't want to cut a bead. And then just snip it off. And you can't even see where that tail was. It's nice and secure because we weaved through. Now we're ready to put on our last big heart. And we're going to first attach it to the heart and snow. Okay, so making sure that that snowflake on top of the big heart is on the left. We're going to sew up the first 2 beads, 1, 2, and then making sure that snowflake's on the left, we're going to sew up not through the first sticky outy bead, but through the second sticky outy bead, and then the next, and then the next, zipping it all the way up until you get to the corner bead on the big heart unit, and I'll meet you there. Okay, we are now coming out of this bead, and we're going to sew up the next 2 beads on the big heart, 1 and 2, ending in the top corner bead. So now we get to attach our last heart and snow. And remember, the 2 snowflakes are on the left. Okay, so we are going to get our thread in position by sewing down the first 2 on the big heart, 1 and 2, and the 2 snowflakes are on the left, so we're going to sew through this bead that's right next to the blue bead, sew down, and that is where we're at now. So then down the next, and down the next, and of course we are going to zigzag all the way down until we get to the big heart corner bead right here. Okay, I'll meet you there. Okay, going through the last sticky outie on the big heart and then through the next 2, landing in that corner bead. So now we get to connect our 3 heart flowers to our big heart. Putting our thread in position, we need to sew down those first 2 beads, and we need to sew through the second sticky outie bead, which is this one. This is the corner bead, that's the first sticky outie, this is the second sticky outie. I know that that's not really what that's called in peyote, but that's what I call it. And then we're going to sew through the next one and zip them on up, ending in this corner bead on the big heart unit. Okay, so we have sewn through this last sticky outy bead, and then we're going to sew through the next one below it and the corner bead. What do you call it? I call it the sticky out. What do you call it? Do you call it the top bead, the tall bead? I'm curious. What is that bead called? Okay, so now we're going to sew through all 5 beads in the circle, going all the way around. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I am trained on YouTube, so many different wonderful designers have trained me throughout the years that I don't have any official bead training, but yeah, some amazing people have trained me, and I think it was Jill Wiseman that taught me, or that called it the sticky outie, so that's what I call it. Or she called it something like that. I don't know. But okay, so we went through once, we went through twice, and now we have gone through 2 times and then 1 bead. So we're not going to, or was that 3 times? I don't know, I was talking. Just make sure it's nice and tight. You can go around 3 times if you want. So we're coming out of the bead, the corner bead on top of the 3 flowers. So we're going to go down that next bead that is kind of loose. Remember, we didn't tighten those beads, and that's for good reason, I promise you. And now we're just going to not zigzag, we're going to weave our thread all the way to this circle. Then we're going to tighten this circle. So weave it until you get to this corner on the big heart, and I'll meet you there. Okay, I am now coming out of this bead, following my thread line. I'm going to go through the corner bead, and now I'm coming out and I'm in position to be able to go through all 5 of these corner beads. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then go through them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now it's nice and tight. I'm going to go down the next 2 beads, and then we are ready to zip up this line. I will meet you at the top corner of the big heart. Okay, so we are now at the top of our heart. We are going to get our thread in position to sew up the last row, but we don't want to sew it up just yet. Let's just get the thread in position. So down that first bead, down the next bead. So we're in the first sticky up, and you'll see that we just have this one last one to put together, but we don't want to yet. First, we want to take our ornament, our little plastic ornament, and we want to fit it in. If we sew it up before we fit in the ornament will not fit. You won't be able to get it in. So make sure that you put it in before you sew up this last row. But now we are ready to sew up the last row, and we can do it while we hold on to the ornament. And it's okay if your ornament moves around. Okay, it's okay also if it pops out of your hand and drops on the floor like it has to me 3 times now, and I don't know why it's so slippery today, but it is. So, and what you'll love about this is that because it's a clear bulb or ornament, when you are hanging this on your tree, or if there's any light at all going through it, because this is clear and kind of shiny, it makes it reflect through the little kind of holes through the beads. It's so beautiful. You're going to love it, even if you've dropped it a few times. It's the beauty of it being plastic, I guess. Okay, so we are coming out of this second bead. We're going to sew through the bead, the second one popping up, our second sticky outie, the one that's right next to the blue, and sew it. Zip it on down until you get to the corner bead, which is going to be, let's see, let me see if I can get it through. One more bead so that you can see that I'm zipping it. We're going to zip it all the way down until we get to the big heart corner bead. I'll meet you there. Okay, so we are now coming out of that last sticky up on the big heart, and we're going to sew through the blue and the one right under it. I decided to go to the right instead of the left. Why not, right? And I guess kind of just showing you that you could if you happen to find yourself in that direction. So we're going to sew through all 5 of these, making the circle, tightening it up, and you'll notice that now that you have your ornament in, you have some good shape to your ornament, all of the units that you've made and have now connected. So I just went twice around and I'm pulling tight, but it's also still just a little wonky. You'll notice some of the beads are kind of not perfect. That's okay. Don't you worry about that, because now we're going to add the top tier, and the top tier is what pulls it all together. So now that I have gone through twice, I am now going to sew up the beads, all the way up the beads, following the line until I get to this top bead right here. Okay, so the corner bead on the heart and snow is where we're going to end, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so coming out of this bead, we are now going to sew through that corner bead, and now it's time to add our top tier. So our top tier, you'll notice, has connection beads on the right hand side, and if you look at this right hand triangle, it has 2 snowflakes. The left hand triangle has 1 snowflake, so that's how you can tell. You always want 2 snowflakes on the right. Okay, so we're going to put our thread in position to pick up that first, it's actually the second bead on the top tier. So first we have to sew through these 2 beads. Okay. And now we are in position to catch this second sticky outie. Okay. I'm going to just turn it. And now we're going to zigzag. We're going to zigzag until we get to this corner point on our top tier, and I will meet you there. Okay, so now we have come out of this bead, and now we're going to sew through the 2 beads ending in that corner bead on the top tier. Pull it nice and tight, and you will see that that top tier will fit right around the ornament cap. Okay, so I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit, giving us a little more room. Okay, so we are now going to add our next tier. We can move the cap kind of out of the way. We're going to add the next tier, making sure that the 2 snowflakes are on the right. Okay, we're going to do that all the way around. I will meet you up. Let's see. First we have to position, going up that first bead, then we can catch the first sticky outie, the next, and the next, and zip it on up, and I will meet you up at this very last sticky outie right there. Okay, so now we are coming out of this last sticky outie. We're going to sew down the next 2 beads, connecting them so it looks seamless. See how it just looks seamless, and you'll notice that your cap is going to fit perfectly in there. I always like to push it out of the way though. Now I'm going to just sew down all the way until I get to this corner bead right here, and then I will meet you here. Okay, so now we are sewing through that corner bead, and I'm going to connect all 5 beads next, pulling them in a circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then go through them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we can sew through the next one down and start attaching this row. Super simple. It gets easier when you've got the ornament on the beads, right? It kind of molds to it. I love it so much. It just feels satisfying, right? While you're pulling it all together and zipping it up. Okay, I'm going to meet you at the corner. Okay, so now we are coming through this bead. We're going to sew up the corner. We're going to pick up another one of our top tiers. We're going to make sure that the 2 snowflakes are on the right. 1, 2. Instead of there's only 1 on this side, there's 2 on this side. And we're going to put our thread in the correct position, sewing up through that first bead. And now it can pick up this first sticky outie. Oh, don't want to get my thread caught. Sewing all the way up, zigzagging, zip it on up until we get to, let's see, this top sticky outie bead. Okay, we are now coming out of that sticky outie bead. We're going to sew down the 2 beads next to it and pull it tight. And now the top fits. We're going to sew back down until we get to the bottom corner again, right here. I'll see you there. Okay, we are now coming out of the bottom corner bead. We're going to sew through the 5 beads. Tightening them up as we go. Don't miss any. Make sure you sew through all 5 of them at least 2 times around. If you prefer to do 3 times, you can do that too. The tighter the better, just don't break a bead. And now we are coming out of that corner bead. We're going to sew through up 1 bead. And now we're in position to connect the top tier to the hearts and snow. So go ahead and zigzag your way down, connecting all of the beads until you get to the bottom corner again, right there. Okay, we are now coming out of the bottom corner. We're going to add our next top tier, making sure that the 2 snowflakes are on the left, or on the right, I'm sorry. And we need to position our thread, so sew up that first bead. Oops, almost dropped it. And now we can sew up the first sticky outie, and then the next one on the right, the next one on the left, the blue one on the right, zip it on up. And once we get to the top, I'm going to show you how to add thread, or how I add my thread. So zip it on up all the way to this top sticky outie bead, and I will meet you there. Okay, I am now coming out of that top bead, and I am going to pull my, see, I have almost no thread left. I'm going to pull my thread off of my needle. I'm going to grab a little bit more thread and just maybe a foot. I only need a foot, but grab as much as you think that you need. Then I'm going to singe, not getting my end in the fire, but just very close to it. Singe a little teensy bead onto each end. So I've got that on my new piece of thread, and now the one that's attached to my ornament. And now I'm just going to tie it in a knot, cross over, and pull through, pull, and then I pull both sides until the knots match up, and now I have my threads attached. You don't waste any thread that way, and so now I can thread my needle. Let's see if I can do this on camera. Not always. Wish me luck. Right on through. Well, thank you. Your wishes of luck really helped. Okay, now we are ready to continue on, and this is where it starts to get tricky because our cap is kind of very snug up against, so you might not have very much room, especially when we get to the last unit, but just maneuver your needle to the right or the left, and you know, just do what you can so that your needle doesn't, you know, get too obstructed by this little cap, right? So we're going to sew down the next two. We have a little knot that we have to deal with, so pull it through each time, and we're just going to sew down, dealing with my little knot each time, all the way down until we get to the corner. We're going to end up in this bottom corner of the top tier, and I will meet you there. Okay, so now we are sewing through that corner bead. We're going to connect the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go through the circle one more time. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pull it nice and tight. Sew up this first bead right here. And now we are in position to start zigzagging, connecting our top tier to our heart and snow. Down that sticky uppy, the next sticky uppy, the blue sticky uppy, and all the way down, and I will meet you on this corner. Okay, now we are sewing through this corner bead. We are ready to put our last top tier on, making sure that we have the 2 snowflakes on the right. We're going to position our thread, sewing up that first bead, and now we can pick up that first sticky outie. See if I can do this. Holding on, okay. And then the next sticky outie, and I'm going to pull it tight because I've got that little knot I'm working through. The next sticky outie, then the blue sticky outie, and we're going to work our way all the way up to the top until we finish coming out of this last sticky outie. Okay, I am now coming out of that last sticky outie. I'm going to sew down the next 2, connecting both of them so you can't even see. It's just seamless, isn't it? Now I'm going to work my way back down to this corner bead. I'll see you there. Okay, sewing through that last corner bead right there. And now we're going to tighten our circle, sewing through 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I'm going to sew up this next bead, and I'm going to sew through the first sticky outie and then the next one. And of course I'm going to zip it up all the way to the corner. I'll meet you right here. Okay, we are going through the corner bead. We're going to sew through the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then sew through all 5 again. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we're going to sew up 1 bead. We're going to catch the next sticky outie bead, the next sticky outie, and sew it all the way up until you end. Let's see, sew it all the way up until you end on this sticky outie. You knew I was going to say that, right? Okay, we are now coming out of that last sticky outie. We're going to sew down through 2 beads, pull tight, and then we're going to sew down 8 to 10 beads, it doesn't matter which ones, and then go up and down a couple of times. Like I'm coming out of this bead, I'm just going to go up and down, making sure that my thread is completely hidden, and then continue going down a couple of more, and then I'm going to cut off my thread. Maybe go up and down one more time, just to make sure. We don't want our thread to get loose after all this work, right? So just make sure. And it fits like a glove. Make sure that all of the 5 circles have been tightened up. And if you follow this direction step by step, then all of them will be tightened up. And now we are ready to make our cap. Let me cut off my thread just by holding my pliers and snipping it off right at the base. Can't see the thread anywhere, right? It's hidden. And you have your perfect ornament. Let's do the cap next. Okay, so we are going to use the same beads that we used to create our ornament, the green, the pink, and the white. I'm going to pour them over on the side, just little piles of them. I'm going to thread my needle with 1 foot of thread, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I have threaded my needle and picked up 40 white beads, and I'm just using this little green bead as a stopper bead. You don't have to do that, but if you do want to, then you just put it on and then you sew it through one time, and it kind of like attaches itself to the string. So then you have your 40 beads. You've got your stopper bead. You want to sew through that first bead right next to the stopper bead. So now your beads are in a circle, just like that. And you want to make sure that it fits over your cap. Okay, so 40 beads is an even number of beads, and it should fit perfectly, as it does. You can see perfectly around the cap. So I am going to take it off for the time being, and I'm just going to use that same peyote stitch, adding one white bead in every other bead. So I'm coming out of this bead, I'm going to skip this bead and sew through this bead. Then pick up one more white bead, skip the next bead, and then sew through the second bead. And once you pull tight, you'll see that they all kind of fall into place. Sometimes it takes a third or fourth bead added in the second row for that to happen, but it will happen, I promise. Coming out of this bead, skip this bead and sew through the next. Pull it down nice and tight, and you'll see that it's starting to look like 2 and then 1, and then 2 and then 1, and that's what it should start looking like. Add one bead, skipping the next bead, going through the next, and do that all the way around until you have added 20 beads on the second row. I will meet you at the end once I have added my 20 beads as well. Okay, this is my 20th bead. I'm coming through this bead. I'm going to sew through this first bead, and I'm skipping that bead. I'm sewing through this bead, which was the first bead that we put on after our stopper bead, and now I'm sewing up, stepping up to the next row. Make sure that we don't get that stopper bead in there, right? So now that we have our full row, we can actually pull off our stopper bead, and we don't have a knot or anything, and the reason for that is we still need to get this circle of beads onto our cap. So what we're going to do is we're going to just fit it on, and it might take a little bit of effort to do that, but it's okay because we've got a little bit of leeway where we can use the tail. We can loosen it a little bit by using the tail, and then once we have it on, just like that, then we can pull both the long thread and the tail thread nice and tight, and now we're ready to put on our second row, which are going to be pink. But I am coming out of a bottom bead right here, so I need to step up to the top. You might find that when you popped your bead circle on that you're actually already at a top bead, and that's fine. You just want to be coming out of a top bead. So now you want to pick up a pink bead and sew through the first sticky outie. pick up another pink, sew through the next sticky outie. Meanwhile, the hand that's holding the ornament is also holding the bead round, the bead circle, onto the cap, because it's so easy for it just to slip off. Continue adding one pink bead all the way around until you've added 20 pink beads, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so now we are at the last pink. We're going to sew up and then step up by sewing through that second bead. So now we're sewing through a pink bead. Pop it on in. And now we are going to add 20 green beads. So coming out of this pink bead, we're going to pick up a green bead and sew through the next. Then pick up a green bead and sew through the next. One green bead, sew through the next, and one green bead, sew through the next. And you'll see if you don't hold on to it, it'll pop off. So hold on to it, and if it does pop off, that's okay. You still have your tail thread, and so you can loosen it up enough to fit it back on, and then make sure that you pull it nice and tight once it's on. Okay, so put all 20 green beads all the way around, and I will see you at the very last one. Okay, now we have picked up our 20th green bead, and we're going to sew through the last pink and then up through that first green bead. Now we just have one more row, so we're going to pick up a green bead and sew through the next green bead. One green bead, sew through the next. And we're going to do this one all the way around, and I will meet you at the very last 20th green bead. Okay, now I've picked up my last green bead. I'm going to sew through the last green bead and step up, pop it into place, and now I'm going to pull the right and the left. Oh, put it right back on. That's why we pull it. Tighten it up nice and good. And now we are going to just weave our thread back and forth 8 to 10 times. We're coming out of this green bead. We're going to go down the pink bead and then up the white bead. Now we're going to go through the white bead and the pink bead and the green bead, trying to get all those rows cinched together. Then we're going to go down the white bead, pop the thread in, and then switching directions up the next 2 white beads right next to it, and that should suffice. We're going to pull that tight, and we're going to cut that thread off, and then we're going to do the same thing to the tail thread, and there we go. Now we just have to put a needle on our tail thread, weave it through just like 8 to 10, pulling nice and tight, And the cap, if you want it to come off, it will come off, but nobody's pulling on that cap because it's an ornament. So, okay, now that our ornament beading is complete and we have put all of our units together, our ornament is looking so good. Now for the finishing touch, we are going to add a ribbon, and all I did was I cut about 12 inches of a ribbon. I folded it in half. I tied a knot right at the end, and then all you need to do is pinch it so that it fits right through your ornament cap, and then pull it through, and then take the loop and pull the knot side through and pull it up, and that is what you will have. So that finishes off your ornament. It looks so cute. I hope you love it as much as I do. Congratulations on finishing your ornament. Wasn't that so much fun? I so enjoyed hanging out with you and beading along with you in this series and this process. It's just a lot of fun to hang out together and do this hobby. I'm very addicted to these ornaments, and I have another one coming out for you very, very soon. So remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you get notified when the next video comes out. Thank you so much for being here with me, and thanks for watching.